CompTIA A+ questions. And I think this is a great way to get your reps in for practice questions, for getting ready for the exam, and sort of applying the concepts to actuality. Well, I don't even want to say actuality, but for answering questions on the exam. Because actuality is when you actually get out there in the field, or when you lab, or I'll say it like this. The further away you get from the books and into real life, the more real it gets, right? So when you get from the books, and then you go from the books to the questions to the labs, from the labs to the real world, that's when it gets real, or at least that's how I perceive it. So the first question we have here from our community tab on the IPV Dre YouTube channel, that's youtube.com/C/C IPV Dre, or you could just look up IPV Dre on YouTube and you'll find my YouTube channel. I post content on labbing, study tips, productivity tips, and other things. Sometimes I go on little candid rants, which you'll see in my community tab in a second, right? So the first question we have here, which I posted an hour ago, is a technician wants to secure shell SSH into a resource on the network. Which port should there be a firewall rule set to allow this action? So this is a question testing your knowledge on port numbers. And by now, you should be an expert on port numbers, or at least know the well-known port numbers, which is what I have listed here. So is it TCP port 22? Is it TCP port 389? Is it TCP port 3389? Is it UDP port 21? Or is it TCP port 23? The answer is obviously TCP port 22. Now, this question also tests your knowledge on firewalls, or it kind of like introduce the nuances of secure shelling into things, or telnetting into something and accessing a resource on a network. So you can have a resource on a network that's behind a firewall, and you can have a situation where you want to you want to access that resource, but you might have some security measures in place to control the traffic into that resource. So for example, let's use an example where the technician is on an outside network and the resource is on the inside network behind a firewall. Ideally, you should block all connections initiated from the outside network into the inside network. You can set rules on a firewall, or you can have access control lists, things of that nature, to allow a specific IP address or specific traffic into that resource. And you can do that over a VPN into that firewall, and it'll be all good. You can also, on the inside network, set a rule that'll allow or deny specific traffic from the inside of the network, initiated from the inside of the network. So maybe you're gonna allow a technician into that resource, but you're not gonna allow an HR person into that network. Or you might allow a technician into that resource and deny all other users on that network, right? So this is what this question, or I want to say, because I'm kind of proud of this question. I'm trying to get more skilled in my question creations writing, but this question essentially introduces the concept of firewalls and it tests your knowledge on port numbers, right? So I'm proud of this question right here. The answer is going to be TCP port 22. TCP port 389, that's LDAP. TCP port 3389, that is going to be remote desktop protocol. I don't know if UDP port 21 is an actual port number. Let's see real quick. Gonna do some Googles. I'm just curious. This is how I test my curiosity. There's a ton of port numbers out there. Side note, UDP port 21 uses the datagram protocol, a communication protocol for the internet network layer, transport layer, and session layer. Yeah, I don't even know what that is. It's not a port number that I've ever been, I guess, tested on, right? But that's what UDP port 21 is. TCP port 23 is telnet, right? Next question. Which of the following Linux commands is used to delete directories and the contents within them? Choose the best option. Now, this was a fun question because I ended up tricking a lot of people on this question. Let's go to the... So, 10% said delete. 69% said RMDIR. Tricked you guys. 2% said CD. 0% said PWD. And 19% said RM. That means that 19% of you guys got it correct. And I know it's a trick. It was a trick question. Here's why. So this was a trick question because remove directory, RMDIR, it removes directories. It deletes directories, gets rid of directories. Only if it is empty. Only if those directories are empty. RM removes directories and the contents within them. So that was the best option to choose. Now, this is what I'm talking about and I was referring to in another video with regard to red herrings. There's red herrings such as this answer right here that'll throw you off the scent of the actual answer. And how it does that is by listing the seemingly obvious answer early in the options, right? So, you know, you can, the problem with a lot of people today, including myself, is that we've been indoctrinated or trained to quickly scan the question, right? Quickly scan the question and then pick the answers that looks the most obvious, right? This one looks the most obvious, delete. That looks the most obvious. I don't even know if that's an actual command. Linux command, by the way. I think it's a Windows command. RMDIR, that's an actual command that does delete directories, but only empty directories. And it throws you off. It is designed to throw you off. Change directory? No, we know that it's you changing the directory. PWD, that's print working directory. That one actually looks like some people get that confused with password, pass WD. And then RM is hiding at the bottom where, you know, you think that, oh, okay, well, you got the answer, you know, as soon as you got in. Oh, that's easy. And this is how these questions are designed to throw you off. And you can get a hint as to the speed at which you're supposed to answer this question by looking at this. Choose the best option. That means read all of the options so that you don't get thrown off. And this is why I like creating these questions of the days, because it allows for you to essentially think your responses through. You have to stop and think when it comes to tech. I know we're in this rapidly breakneck pace society where we want to do things as quickly as possible, but it just doesn't work that way when it comes to problem solving. It's totally okay for you to stop and think. So how you would answer this question is not just by knowing the answer, but also by reading the question slowly. Which of the following Linux commands, I could have thrown a Windows command in there, something like that, that would have thrown you off. Because if you read too fast, you might go, which of the following, you go, which of the following commands is used to do, and then you end up picking the wrong answer. Take your time. Which of the following Linux commands is used to delete directories and the contents within them? choose the best option. So this is requiring a lot of brain power. It's requiring that you know the answer, and this is what I was speaking about before, and again, another video. Know the answer, or ideally try to answer the question in your mind before you look at the questions, so that you're not thrown off by a red herring such as RMDIR and a sleeper right here. This one could also throw you off because it's like, oh, obvious. You just type in delete, right? So this is a question, or these are the types of questions that you really want to slow down for. And 2, look for these type of questions in your practice material so that you can get the reps in with regard to practicing them, right? So yeah, that was a good question. So let's go back. All right. Which of the following is an exterior gateway protocol? Is it OSPF, Eigrp, intermediate system to intermediate system, BGP, or RIP, next generation? So the answer is going to be BGP. Currently, I'm studying BGP for the CCNP, and I know that I'm probably well out of my range here with BGP, because that is sort of like an advanced concept in CCNP, but I love routing so much that I wanted to see what the fuss is about with BGP. And I believe last year, I think it was in October, there was some issues with BGP with one of these companies or whatever. But yeah, the answer is going to be BGP. It's an exterior gateway protocol. OSPF, Eigrp, ISIS, and RIP, next generation. Those are interior gateway protocols. Those are the protocols that allow for the advertising, the sharing of routes between routers in an autonomous system. An autonomous system is simply an organization that, it's simply an organization. So Facebook has their own autonomous system. Twitch has their own autonomous system. Amazon has their own autonomous system. Google. These are different organizations and companies that have their set of networking equipment under the control of IT staff, right? And we're going to get into configuring basic BGP in a little bit. Question of the day. Which of the following is the max throughput of 802.11ac? This is a fun question. This is something that you absolutely need to know for your CompTIA A+ certification. You must know, and I would say just freaking memorize this stuff. You must know all of this. You have to know you have to know which one is which, right? I'm going to share a little chart with you from Jeremy's IT lab. But before we even do that, let's answer the question. Which of the following is the max throughput of 802.11ac? See, this question and this question is either you know it or you don't, right? And you still want to take your time reading this question, but it's a straightforward question, and I would still advise you to read through it, because how would you know if it's straightforward if you don't read through it, right? So is it 2 megabits per second? Is it 8 megabits per second? Is it 54 megabits per second? Is it 600 megabits per second? Or is it 6.93 gigabits per second? I want to stop and note something real quick. There's a difference between megabits and megabytes, or gigabits and gigabytes. Bits is referring to throughput, because throughput is the transmission bit by bit, right? That's how you could think of networking, right? It's translated bit by bit. The node receives it, reads it really quick, like it's really fast, and it just, pretty much reads it off really quick. I don't really get into all of that, but megabits per second is throughput. Megabytes per second is storage, right? So that's a way that you need to know these concepts, or you can differentiate between the two concepts, right? So the answer is going to be 6.93 gigabits per second. We had a few comments here. J Technique said, opening up a crazy can of worms with this one. Yeah, it is, because this is something a little bit more, I don't want to say advanced, but it's one of those things that is annoying to memorize, right? I would say out of all of the material that you should just memorize, it's this. Just straight up memorize this stuff. And I'm going to show you a little chart in a second. It's not mine, it's Jeremy's IT lab. I used his resources to study for the CCNA. Highly recommend that you get his course if you're studying for the CCNA. It's free on YouTube, and you can purchase the course on Teachable and Udemy, right? So Alan L said 600 megabits per second. And KEMO said that's 802.11n. All right, so let's see. So these are the 802.11 standards, and I would say that you should memorize all of them. This is from Jeremy's IT lab. Great material. He has his course up on YouTube for free. Highly recommend. So 802.11, the frequency is 2.4 gigahertz and 2 megabits per second throughput, right? 802.11b, 2.4 gigahertz and a higher throughput, which is 11 megabits per second. 802.11a, 5 gigahertz and 54 megabits per second. 802.11g, 2.4 with 54 megabits per second. So you can see here that there's, throughout the histories, there were some fluctuations and some updates. I don't know. This is not the exact order that these were developed, or maybe it is, not sure. But you can see that there were some advancements and developments with regard to these standards, right? The difference between 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz is that 2.4 gigahertz has typically a longer range, while 5 gigahertz is a shorter range, right? And then sometimes you see that the throughput evolves, right? You see that this one has a shorter range, more throughput than maybe its, I guess, predecessor, or maybe, something like up here, an earlier standard. And then you see that, there's an advancement and development, and longer range, more throughput. You see here, 802.11n, 2.4 and 5 with 600 megabits per second. So KEMO was right. And that's referred to as Wi-Fi 4. 802.11ac, 5 gigahertz, 6.93 gigabits per second, Wi-Fi 5. Here's a funny thing. When I was studying for the A+, there was no Wi-Fi 6. That goes to show you how fast this is all evolving, right? So I guess, let me see, when did I get mine? Look at my certification real quick. Yeah, I got it back in February of 2021. So about a year and a half ago, I got my certification. And a year and a half ago, there was no Wi-Fi 6. This is why I think certifications are important, because they help you keep up with this stuff. If I wasn't paying attention to a lot of the networking side of things, I wouldn't have known this. And it's good that when you get a certification, you keep on updating your knowledge with getting recertified, or at least studying the material if you don't want to get recertified and just getting the CEUs, right? 802.11ax, 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz. 4 times 802.11ac. So that's going to be approximately 24, 25 point something gigabits per second, right? Wi-Fi 6. And you notice that this is in the 6 gigahertz range. Yeah, they're expanding the bands or the frequencies, I believe. I still need to memorize that. I'm not really a wireless guy, but they're expanding the ranges. It's going from 2.4, 5, now it's gonna go to 6. I would think that maybe the range on that's gonna be pretty short. I don't know, right? I'm not really a wireless guy. I'm more of a networking, routing and switching type of dude, right? Even though to some extent wireless is in that realm somewhere, right? You get a sip of my tea. I'm drinking some turmeric tea. Some turmeric black tea. Oh, that's good. That's good. Definitely something that you guys should drink on a daily basis if you are a tea person. Okay, yeah, this is a rant that I went on. I went on this rant, and I believe I covered this in the last video, so we're not gonna do that. Some of these questions are overlapping from the last video because when did I do the last live stream? I don't even remember. But yeah, we'll go over this again. Which of the following hard drive types are used in laptops? SSD, HDD, M.2, all of the above, or none of the above? So if you paid attention to the last live stream or you watched the video version of this on the YouTube channel, the answer is all of the above. SSDs, HDDs, M.2s. I think nowadays it's mainly going to be solid state drives and M.2s, right? There are still some optical drives, which are not necessarily, they're not hard drive or storage, but there's still optical drives in some, like in my MacBook 2012, I got an optical drive. I'm probably gonna remove that and put an SSD in. Okay, these commands we might be using today. We might be using ping and traceroute. So we went over this already. Which command constructs a map of how data moves throughout the internet from its source to its destination? We did this already. For those of you who are new, it is going to be traceroute. It essentially shows you, I don't even want to say a map. Maybe a map is a bad example or a bad analogy or metaphor, but it traces a path to the destination that you wanna, I guess, troubleshoot, right? Trace route, trace path. It's the same thing pretty much, right? So you can find if there's an issue with a router along the way. I used trace route, funny enough, and this is why I should start live streaming when I'm learning about things. But when I was learning BGP and I wanted to configure, you're gonna see in a second the topology that I configured, but for some reason or another, I wasn't able to ping a resource in a separate autonomous system from one autonomous system to another. So I used a traceroute command to find where the error could have been, and I actually solved the problem that way, right? I believe that there was an issue with one autonomous system advertising network routes out to the service provider or to the next autonomous system, right? What should you put RAM in when shipping or storing it? We did this already. The answer was anti-static bag. You wouldn't do bubble wrap, electrical tape, or styrofoam, especially not styrofoam, because styrofoam it can produce or conduct some ESD, right? This is a rant that I went on before. And which port number uses POP3? TCP 110. The reason why I breezed through those is because we went over those already. But again, those of you who didn't see this, you can just dig into the community tab on my channel and go through them, right? And I think these are great practice questions. These are really good practice questions. So yeah, that's it for the practice questions. I hope they help you, prepare for the exam. I also hope that I don't want you guys to necessarily focus on or think that you have to focus on memorizing anything. Again, I think it's about the reps that you put in and how you practice solving problems. That's the most important thing. How do you practice solving these problems? What is your method? What is your line of reasoning? What is your line of thinking? That's how I'd like to, ideally like for you guys to think about it, because that's how I think about it. I don't try to memorize things as much as I do learn them, right?